Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Introduction to Imagery session this morning. Your presenter is Jacqueline Nova. Jacqueline has over 13 years of GIS experience working with federal, state, and local government agencies. In August 2021, Jacqueline joined ESRI as a solution engineer to support state government customers. Before ESRI, Jacqueline worked as a project manager and geospatial decision support lead for the GeoFidelis program office as a consultant. Jacqueline obtained a bachelor's degree in geography with a certification in GIS in 2013. More recently, Jacqueline received a graduate certification in IT management from Virginia Tech. Please welcome Jacqueline this morning.
Hi, everybody. I will admit that this is the first time I've used a microphone to do a presentation, so bear with me on that. But today we're going to do a brief introduction to imagery, and I also just want to say happy GIS Day to everybody out there. So we have 40 minutes, so it's a lot to cover because imagery is a whole range of things that we deal with in GIS, interact with in GIS, but it's also its own entire discipline of itself, separate from GIS. So today we're just going to go over an overview of image analysis, and then we're going to talk a little bit about imagery management strategies, which is really important to consider. When we think about image analysis, we always have to consider what infrastructure we're utilizing to perform our image analysis. So that's why we're going to get into image management strategies. And then we're going to go into visualizing imagery. We might get some time for deep learning, but that might not happen, just depending on the time. And then we'll go over some questions and resources. If you do have any questions during the presentation, I am going to just kind of ask everybody to hold towards the end, just because we do only have 40 minutes. Okay, so when we look at imagery, right, we're all pretty familiar with just like a satellite imagery that we see here, these 5 satellite imageries on the screen. And we can use these for base maps, we can use these for digitization, but a lot of times what we're talking about with image analysis is extracting information from imagery. So when we look at these, what can we get from them? What can we utilize and extract from these? And we can see here, we can extract different land coverages, we can understand and do object detection, understanding the industrial city and getting the building footprints there in Kuwait, and doing different compositions. So all of this is aspects and things you can see are outcomes of a image analysis. So what can we do with image analysis? How can we utilize image analysis? Where does image analysis come in? So image analysis and imagery in general can go into multiple different disciplines. So we see all of the different disciplines here on the map. So the one we're kind of talking about first is that analysis. So really understanding image classification, doing change detection, feature extraction. This is where traditional GeoAI comes in. So a lot of classic machine learning, doing object detection and whatnot. We also see visualization. So using 3D or, building different applications, using your imagery to drape over layers to just get a better visualization of what's going on. That's kind of a more traditional use. But even more so with visualization, we're getting more into reality mapping. So taking that and building out our digital twin, using different 2D and 3D outputs and seeing that at a large scale. So all of these different functions also have to be managed. So we're always kind of considering and talking about managing your GIS. So understanding simple access to your content, how to host your imagery and stream it out to on a cloud or to different users, and making sure that those images are meeting open standard concepts. Ooh, sorry. Okay. So when we're thinking specifically about image analysis, it's a little interesting that there's so many people all around me. So I'm just gonna kind of be able to see you all. So there's lots of different forms for image analysis. So you're utilizing different forms across. So you're seeing things like the different data that you can bring in. So majority of what we think about is imagery, but imagery is like not necessarily the most comprehensive term. When we think about what you can do with image analysis, we're thinking about rasters. And rasters are anything that have a numerical value to a pixel. So when we think about image analysis, you're thinking about working with rasters. Some of those rasters might be imagery, but can anybody else give me like another example of a raster? A raster, LiDAR, maybe, land cover, multispectral imagery, all those kinds of things, elevation, point clouds, they're kind of up in the screen, just for everybody's awareness. And so the imagery, the information that you're taking in those raster data models are then put into a streamlined analysis workflow. And that's where we see things like change detection, or time series analysis, different suitability analysis is here in the middle. And that's gonna allow us to push to our impact decisions. And that's gonna be sharing that information out, deriving those products, dashboards, storyboards, story maps, different custom applications. And all of that can be done with different language models. So you can also extend all this information, all this analysis into Jupyter Notebooks, or into Conda, or into Pandas, and utilize like Python or JavaScript on your image analysis workflows. Okay, so here's a brief example of a raster analysis. So here on the left side, gosh, this mic, can you guys hear me? Okay, I gotta take. Okay. All right, sorry. Okay, so when we think about that, how do we break that down? So on those images on the left, right here, we have to do different geoprocessing because all of these different layers, the flood risk, the mean rainfall level, the mean temperature, they all have different measurements of their bands, right? These are all pixels. So each pixel has a number, each band has like a set of criteria. So the first part of most image analysis process is utilizing geoprocessing tools to make sure that all of your sources are compatible to one another within their analysis. So this is really where we see geoprocessing coming in, making sure that your rasters are in the same area, in the same region, they're lining up correctly there. You're able to understand their band so you can compare them properly, and getting them ready to be run into raster functions. So with raster functions, this is where we really start getting into depth with our raster analysis. This is where we see things like math operations, statistics, doing different band math, and really being able to understand that. So our raster functions, there are like, you can see here, there are some raster functions that are available in GIS Pro. But really, when you start getting into more raster analysis, you're going to be looking at different extensions within Pro. So the ArcGIS image analysis extension is there, so you can do image segmentation, classification, really focusing on image analysis at a certain level, not really going into higher depth of like what you get with the spatial analysis tool. So the spatial analysis extension is where you're seeing things like hydrology, overviews, things like that. So what we do is we get our geoprocess, get our rasters all in order, easily able to compare. We start running raster functions on them to discern and understand our information. And all that can also be done in our Python. So raster functions can also be done chained together. So it's kind of like Model Builder. If you're familiar with Model Builder, you can have different functions chained together, and that's going to have this main process that can be run over and over again on your rasters. So if you're doing processing regularly, if you're collecting imagery with a drone and you need to do the same exact extraction every single time, you can do that within your raster function process, save the template, and continuously run it. Okay, so everything we've talked about, the geoprocessing as well as the raster functions, can also all be run in Python. You can import all this information into ArcPy and run it. This is just your standard editor, but you can also do this in notebooks. And I do think that Python can be really helpful using imagery, especially depending on how you're storing it, because it takes a lot of bandwidth to run itself on imagery, and having it run in the background or having it run offline when you're not necessarily doing something on your computer can be helpful. So I always recommend looking into Python for any sort of image analysis you're doing. And there's an entire Python library between ArcPy and the ArcGIS API for Python. You can pretty much do all the imagery analysis you want. So this is mainly everything I've talked about right now has been talked about through Pro, but everything that we can do can be done in different environments. So when we think about environments in the Esri product line, we tend to think about 3 different environments. So you have the server, right? So you have your enterprise environment, and then you have your ArcGIS Online environment, right? Which is cloud, but cloud hosted by Esri. And then you also have mobile environments, which I would not recommend for image analysis. To do a mobile environment, not really great for that. But then you also have your own cloud environment if you want. So when we think about managing imagery, those things we have to keep in mind. So these are kind of those different, oh yeah, I got a laser pointer. You guys can't really see that though. So these are the different environments you can do image management within Esri. So we have your desktop ArcGIS Pro environment. This is doing it on your Pro desktop machine. This is probably what most people are familiar with in terms of imagery. Raise your hand if you're using this for image analysis now. Okay, all right, I see some timid hands out there. Okay, so then you have ArcGIS Online, and this is SaaS. So this is where you're uploading all of your imagery into your ArcGIS Online environment. This is a relatively new area. You can run your raster analysis in this environment. You can do your geoprocessing in this environment, and the infrastructure is managed by Esri, so you're not paying for space for your imagery, which is helpful in a lot of ways, because imagery it's very sizable. More traditionally, you have ArcGIS Enterprise, so that would be your server environment. So with your server environment, you would be utilizing ArcGIS Image Server. That would be federated into your enterprise server. And you can have this on premises or in the cloud, depending on your requirements. But that is where, if you have different requirements that are going to require you to manage your infrastructure, have multiple editing environments, or have security requirements that are going to have you have your imagery on a server, you're really going to end up looking at enterprise. And then image dedicated is really only advisable if you have like more than 8 terabytes of data. So very sizable, like state level holdings of data. And that's where Esri will connect to a AWS or Azure bucket to manage your imagery. So we're gonna go through these in more detail. So your ArcGIS Pro, and all of these are gonna have I knew that there was a short amount of time, so all of these they're meant for you to screenshot, right? You're gonna get the PowerPoint too, but feel free to take photos of these. It's gonna tell you every single time what inputs are available, what outputs are available, and what you can publish to. So if you're working in Pro, which I think the majority of us are currently with our imagery, you can input, pretty much every format that you think of within the Pro environment. I think, what the main function of doing image analysis in Pro is the ability to publish out, right? So if you're doing your image analysis on a desktop environment, you're able to publish your information out to a server, to ArcGIS Online, or to Image Dedicated, and you're able to perform additional and extensive analysis doing focal in regional global analysis, or you can do full motion video in Pro, which is pretty awesome. I don't think that's online yet. But Pro can get sizable. It can get pretty hefty in terms of just getting all of the imagery out there. If you're working on like a laptop with like 16 gigabytes of data, it doesn't really work. So recently, ArcGIS has been pairing up with Microsoft, and they're doing this like Pro machine. And it's a subscription service. If you are really utilizing Pro and you're not necessarily pushing to like a server to ArcGIS Online, this can really enhance a desktop environment, especially when working with imagery. Like I said, imagery, I don't know if you've all had to like wait for a raster function to like 2 hours for it to complete because it's processing so long on a desktop, but this really helps speed it up. So if you are interested in working with different image analysis in a desktop environment, I highly recommend this if you're needing a little more speed. Okay, so from desktop, we understand our desktop environment, right? We understand Pro. Now we're gonna talk about ArcGIS Image for ArcGIS Online. So ArcGIS Image for ArcGIS Online came out like last year, and it has all the raster functions, all the geoprocessing tools available that you have in Pro within your ArcGIS Online environment. And it has the benefit of being in a ESRI managed cloud. So you're not having to pay for the infrastructure, you're not having to manage the gigs of data, your imagery is in the cloud, you're processing your imagery in the cloud. It's all a subscription service. So you can see here the different capabilities you're able to do. Image management in your hosted imagery, your tiled imagery, and your dynamic imagery. I have a slide later on that's going to break down what those three categories are. And you're also able to do image analysis. So you do have to have an online subscription to this, and you can see all the different use cases there. But really, when we're thinking about ArcGIS Image for ArcGIS Online, we're thinking about organizations who do not want to manage their infrastructure. So if you don't want to deal with a server, because I don't know who does, and you want to be able to do image analysis and manage it and share it out really easily, ArcGIS Image for ArcGIS Online is a really great environment to work in and do your image analysis through. So it's SaaS-based, no infrastructure management, and you're working within that online environment. Any questions? Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Licensing, it looked like you had like an extension for image. Is that a different class? Because I'm thinking like we have like creators or users.
Yeah, so the licensing model can always get a little tricky. It is a separate, if you have ArcGIS Online right now, you need to talk to your account manager and add in ArcGIS Image for ArcGIS Online with an image analysis. It's just like an extension, right? In Pro, you have to like purchase that extension. It's the same in online, same kind of environment. Go ahead.
And so the other thing that really caught my attention was you said no cost for storage.
You're not managing your infrastructure. So you're not paying for the cost of your infrastructure, as opposed to, it's still a credit-based model, like anything else on ArcGIS Online.
Because I mean, like if you were to store like a spreadsheet or anything up there, you have your credits going against that storage.
Yeah, but you're not paying for like a server, and you're not paying for like managing. So when I say that, let me just clarify. I'm talking about you're not paying for your infrastructure. So
you are still paying.
Yeah, we're gonna charge you. Yeah. Yep. No. Don't let anybody at ESRI fool you about that. Okay, so I'm gonna keep going. I'm sorry, but we'll cover stuff later. I just got a lot of slides to get through. Just got excited, imagery. Okay, so if you're not doing your image analysis in a desktop environment, you're not doing your image analysis in ArcGIS Online, in your ArcGIS Online account, a lot of times this is a security concern. You don't necessarily want your imagery to be outside of a firewall, or you want to have it in a multi-editing environment. You're going to be using Server. This is been here for a long time. You do have to have an enterprise environment already to work with this. And you just federate your enterprise environment to your image server. Everything that you do in your image server can be published out to your ArcGIS Online environment or a portal environment. And really what we're thinking about here is making sure that you you require imagery to be in a server environment. So you're managing your infrastructure, you're managing your servers, and you're responsible for your infrastructure. So a lot of this is a security requirement. You can deploy image server in a cloud. So you can, just like you can deploy, but you would own your own cloud environment. So you could have an enterprise with a federated image server in a AWS environment, or you can have it on premises, either one of those options. And kind of the same thing, you can publish everything out to, using Pro, using Enterprise, you can publish it out to your ArcGIS Online environment, your Portal environment, you can publish dynamic images or tiled images, and do different raster functions kind of like we've seen. You can also do a lot of deep learning functions in image server as well as in Pro. I don't think a lot of the deep learning functions have made it completely into ArcGIS Online. So they're getting there. Some of them are there, but just not all of them. Not full parity yet. Okay, and then last but not least is image dedicated. So image dedicated we really only see when we're looking at 8 terabytes of data, and that's because of the cost, right? So if you're less than 8 terabytes of data, credit-wise in ArcGIS Online, it makes more sense for you to do ArcGIS Image for ArcGIS Online. If you're more than 8 terabytes of data, it's not as cost-effective, so we push to image dedicated, and that's really where we see image dedicated being used. So it has all of the same capabilities. You're just really utilizing ESRI-supported infrastructure to be able to stream that information in. Image dedicated, I'm not going to joke around. It is a complicated system. Here's just a quick architecture of it. So how it's working is it's connecting to your AWS or Azure bucket and bringing that into ArcGIS Online, or into Enterprise or into a Portal environment. So it's very complicated. It's not something that we see utilized except maybe at a state or federal level. But you're able to kind of utilize it with Pro, do predefined workflows, integrate different APIs. It has a lot of elasticity. It's really designed to have elasticity and be able to be an effective management of the infrastructure that your imagery is on, right? Because that's really where the cost of imagery comes in, is managing that infrastructure that it's on. So you can publish tiled imagery or dynamic imagery, perform different analysis, and share that imagery out. It is required to be Azure or AWS, and again, we can see that really intense diagram here. So this probably isn't for the majority of us, but it is available out there if you are working with more than 8 terabytes of data. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to pause for questions now for those different ones. Go ahead.
Oh. So with the Arc Pro machine system, would that be...
From Microsoft?
Yeah, with the Microsoft. Would that be a more versatile imagery tool compared to, say, Image Dedicated or Image Server?
So it's not really... No. So it will speed up your machine to help doing image processing. But really the difference between those different types comes into these questions. So when we're thinking, and Pro isn't even on here, because really when we're talking about Pro, we're not talking about image analysis where we're managing our imagery, right? We're talking about where you're necessarily performing your imagery. And so when we're thinking about the Microsoft, computer, it's really to help us run those processes if you are just on a desktop. If you're kind of connected to a bigger network and you're kind of using a server in that same space, you're not necessarily going to hit the same issues depending on what you're doing. So when we think about, I don't know, I just offered questions, I took it away from you guys again. But when we think about our different options for managing imagery, we do want to kind of play around with these different environments, understanding that when we're thinking about ArcGIS Image for ArcGIS Online, we want to be doing lower raster data management skills, so you're not managing your infrastructure, you're not dealing with a server, you're not having to, do all of that kind of workflows. You have that lower raster data volume, and you prefer a SaaS environment. I am extremely pro SaaS. It doesn't necessarily work for everybody, but if you want to talk SaaS, I'm your girl. So I think a SaaS environment is really important. That's where you kind of see everything with ArcGIS Image for ArcGIS Online and Image Dedicated. Image Dedicated is also a SaaS environment, but you are reaching that higher total of data. I'm on the right side if you guys. And then you also have that download requirement or capability. And then server, you're dealing with your own infrastructure management. You have high raster data management skills. Right, it's more sizable. It's more challenging to manage something in a server environment than it is in a SaaS environment. It's more costly to manage something in a server environment than in a SaaS environment. This is also what you need if you have an on-premises requirement, or bigger security requirements. Okay, and then this is, I think, one of my favorite slides that I ever have created, because I don't think people tend to understand the difference between map, tile, cache, tiled image layers, and dynamic image layers. So you can kind of see all the difference here. But when you think about map, tile, cache, you're really thinking about base maps, right? And this is because they are pyramided. I don't know if everybody remembers like ArcMap, except the pyramids. That was like a whole thing I grew up with. So what the pyramids do is it doesn't allow for every pixel to load, so it doesn't allow for you to do analysis on it, which is why it's great for a base map and nothing else. So that's what you can think of with your map tiled cache. When you think about tiled imagery layers and dynamic imagery layers, your dynamic imagery layers are really gonna allow for you to have every single pixel loaded. And that's where you're gonna be able to do more in-depth analysis than with your tiled image layer. Your dynamic image layers, though, they're more costly, they take up more credits, they're more sizable because you're able to see every single pixel, you're able to perform analysis on every single pixel. So those are really the differences there. It's kind of scaling up from level of in-depth detail you need. So your map tiled cache is kind of the lowest bar. Then you have your tiled image layer where you can do some understanding of analysis, but really when you're getting in depth, you're gonna have to always push to that dynamic image layer. I told you guys I'm pro SaaS. And I'm pro SaaS not just for imagery, for everything, and I'm happy to talk about it. But a big part of that is being able to eliminate the need for infrastructure, being able to limit the need for server environments. When we see this with imagery, that really is going to help make your imagery scalable, make your imagery more accessible, easier to use. It usually is going to have a fixed storage cost, and it's going to help. It helps a lot of customers stay in budget. You're not necessarily having to plan for like, oh, we have to update all of our servers, because that can always be a pain. And you're also able to run analysis within ArcGIS Online. So if you are getting into image analysis and you are thinking about doing it more comprehensively, ArcGIS Image for ArcGIS Online, I do really recommend it for most people. Okay. And then last but not least, there are some training resources here. I'm a huge fan of ArcGIS, or learn.arcgis.com, which is all ESRI trainings. There, you have like the training catalog where you can take training. I think we're all probably used to the catalog. And those are like very academic lessons. But the learn.arcgis site is like labs. So you'll get fake data. You'll be able to bring that data into your environment and play around with your environment. It will give you a sign up for like ArcGIS. I think for different products, if you need it. Some of them do have requirements for you to already have the product, but check it out. I love it. I think it's like one of the better training tools we put out there. There's also a muck usually, but all of the imagery workflows that are listed here have training based in the learn.com. So check those out, check those resources out. And then we have about 10 minutes for questions if there's any more questions.
Any questions? Do we have any online?
Okay.
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 Hold on. I'm bringing you the microphone so that the people online can hear the question that you're asking.
Sorry, I keep putting my back to you guys.
So my question is from the one slide you had, I think it was dynamic imagery layers on the far right side.
Yes.
Is that going to be utilizing typically your raw images? Is that what it's versus a tiled? Because a tiled is on demand of the raw. And I was just trying to get a difference between those two.
Yeah, so raw images, no, you're going to use, if you're using a dynamic image layer, you're usually going to be having that in like a mosaic data set. So a mosaic data set is just a better storage technique for imagery. But no, you wouldn't traditionally use a raw data in that, even though it is being able to collect all the pixels. It's not necessarily raw. It's still processed before it's processed into a mosaic data set before, and that's just really for managing the scalability of the pixels. Does that make sense? Kind of. We can get more into detail with it, but no, it wouldn't necessarily be raw. You're usually dealing with that environment in a mosaic data set and pushing it to a dynamic image layer.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Jacqueline, very much. Very informative.